The moment I say school, so many memories are comes back to me. It's like after every exam, when I walk out, the teacher would say, "Hey, come, how did you do?" I would say with a great smile, "I will definitely pass." And I didn't understand why, in one hand, they say, "Speak the truth." In the other hand, when you say the truth, they hated you. So it went on like that. And I didn't know, where else to find myself. So I remember those nights I used to go to sleep with asking help from unknown. Because for some reason I couldn't believe what my father and mother have it in a puja room as a god. Because of course my friend's family has something else as a god. So I thought, just I will pray to unknown and ask help. And started getting help from everywhere, each and every corner of my life at that time. My brother started giving me a few tips about drawing and painting. Then, when I was in 8th standard, around 13-year-old, I started working in a part-time job in one of the signboard artists called Pothu. Then, school also started supporting me. Oh, he is bad in studies, but let him send to the drawing competitions. So, it was good to survive with that little tool, I found to find my own place in school. In one of those competitions, I just won a small little transistor Philips radio, and I didn't have patience to wait until I reached home. So I just switched on in the train loudly. If you travel in Indian train, you can see people listen to radio and, even from the mobile. So at that time, when I was 13, and I was listening to just radio, and someone happened to sit next to me, like these three people are sitting here, like just adjacent to me. He just started asking, "Where did you bought the radio? How much is it?" I said, "It's a prize from art competition." Then he said, "Oh, I teach in College of Arts. I think you should study in School of Art. You just quit school and come there." So why I'm telling you this, maybe, whoever is sitting next to you can change your whole life. It's possible. It's just that we need to be open and fine-tuned. So that's what made me to enter College of Arts after 3 attempts and just continue to inquire what I really want to do with artworks or art. And finally, I'm here in front of you. When I look back, on what happened between that time and now, here, the last 10, 15 years, I can see that most of the works are revolved around 3 subjects, but it was not intentional. I just started with trace because I was thinking, what really makes us? It's actually past, what makes the present. So I was thinking, but when you look at the past, the way to understand the past is only by the traces available because we cannot go back to past. It can be ruins, or it can be music, or it can be painting, or drawing, or writing, whatever it is, but it's just a kind of a trace of that time. And that fascinated me, to explore that territory. So I was like working on the line that instead of working about traces, I started capturing traces. So here are some of the works I'd like to show you. So this is called Self in Progress. It's just a trace of being in this body. So here what happened that, what I really enjoyed the most is like, this sculpture is nothing but trace from myself. It's almost like a 3D photograph. So there is an element of performance, and there is an element of sculpture, and there is an element of feeling oneself, so close to oneself. So it's almost like fossil for future. And then moved slowly to explore the other possibilities of capturing traces. So this is what I was talking about. While molding, it's such a great experience because we have a freedom of like walking or moving my hand or, moving around in the space. But the moment this becomes solid, when you cannot move even an inch, because this is plaster of Paris. So the moment you pour it, it's liquid, but after like 20 minutes, it's almost like a hard stone. So this is capturing trace of thumbprint, because knowingly or unknowingly, whatever we do, we leave our traces here. So I just thought I'm going to capture thumbprint, footprint, or whatever we leave trace as a human. So this is trace of fire. This is trace of sun. Because when I was capturing traces, this thought comes to me always like, is it only when the object touches the thing, it leaves the trace, or is it other way to capture it? So this work is nothing but like, because of the focal length of the lens, it just shows what is on the other side. So I just put the paper on the focal length, which was an etching print. Then I got the portrait of sun from sunlight. This is called dawn to dawn. What I did here, I just put like 10 feet paper, then put a coconut rope and just burn it. So it took about 24 hours to get this line. So wherever the fire is eating the paper, that's what becomes the word. Detail. Even though we have traces, when we try to understand them, the perception and context play a major role to understand it. So do we really understand what it is, or we are trying to get what we think it is? Then move towards questioning the perception, because even though there are traces, when we try to understand them, you play a major role. So like, let's say even a simple act, how many of you saw cow crossing in India while you are coming from Bangalore to Mysore? Can you just raise the hand? If we just ask an opinion of how everyone can interpret it, like let's say if a school teacher says, she will simply say to get to the other side. Why the cow is crossing the road, the answer can be so different. If Plato said, he would say, for the greater good. Martin Luther King would say, I imagine a world where all cows will be free to cross the road without having their motives called into question. Imagine Moses comes now, and if he see the same cow walking around the street, he would definitely say, God came down from heaven, and he said unto the cow, thou shalt cross the road. And cow crossed the road, and there was a much rejoicing as a holy cow. Freud would say, the fact that you are at all concerned reveals your underlying sexual insecurity. If we ask Einstein, he would say, whether the cow crossed the road or the road moved underneath the cow, it depends on your frame of reference. Or Buddha. If you see the same cow, he would say, asking this question denies your own nature of cow. So, what we see is just what we think often. And most of the time, we don't see what it is. It just all depends on one's perception. And context. What is really context? I could just show with this little piece of paper, because I always think meaning doesn't really exist. The meaning what we create in this world doesn't exist. It's just created by the mind. If you look at this piece of paper, this is the breadth. And this is called length. This is how we had been taught in school. But if we tear it in the middle, now I didn't touch this breadth, but still the meaning of this changes. So what we conceive as a meaning is always not there. It's on the other side. Even when we say dark, light, good, bad, tall, short, all meaning, it doesn't exist in reality. It's just that being a human, the way how we train to perceive the reality, create this meaning. So this work from this period is mostly like, this is a work called Light Makes Dark. It's just a captured truth from the lamp. So the lamp is not just giving a light, it also gives a darkness. So this is a work of art which is just trying to explore that. This is called In But Out. This shows how limited our eye or hearing sense or touch. Do we really see? This is exact negative. It's about 6 inches deep in the wall, but it just appears like it's coming out of the wall. The wall is almost like, this is the first skin, and this is the second, and this is the third, which creates the meaning. We're just pulling the wall of the gallery. Again, In But Out, it's a full figure cast from myself. It's about 8 inches deep. When I was doing that, I always wondered, since I worked with traces and now, I moved to the questioning the perception, whenever I see the bird flying in the sky, it just makes me feel like, is it anything behind? Is it any traces out there which as a human, we don't see them? is there any way to capture the thought into a visual art? I couldn't find it. But the solution arrived after being quiet and not working for about 6-7 months in a restaurant. When I was changing the air freshener, that goes from solid substance to vapor. It's called Odonil. This is the work I made out of that material. The process to get to make the sculpture was interesting because I wrote to Balsara, who produced that air freshener called Odonil, saying, "Dear sir, I'm an artist. This is my catalog. Would you help me to make the sculpture?" They never wrote back to me. Then I thought, I will go to the small-scale industries facilitating unit and ask help. So I told them, I'd like to start an air freshener company. They said, of course, this is the fee for the project report, and we will give you all the detail. And they gave. Finally, I went back to them and said, it's not for starting the company, it's just to make my own work. Please come for the show. And they did. And this work is in Devi Art Foundation in Delhi. In India, nobody really talks about works of art. They always talk about the appreciation of art. You buy this for 3,000 rupees, it will become 30,000 in 2 months. This is the graph was going on. But there are a few collectors who also collect the art which can depreciate. And this is collected by Anupam, which is like, finally, in the end, he will not have anything because it will evaporate. So this is after a few weeks. This is after a few months. It's just all about questioning the preconception. So if someone say, oh, I see the portrait, it may not be the portrait after a few months. And if they say it's solid, it will not be solid. It will evaporate. And if they say they don't get it, that's also not true. Because it's in the air, it's in the same gallery or in the same museum. So they inhaled it, but they are not aware of it. While I was doing that work, my mom and my dad, they are looking at it and they say, why do you deal with negative subject all the time? And I was like, what do you mean? Light makes dark, and now evaporating self? Don't you think it remains something about death? I said, of course not. For me, I'm thinking this is stuck in some solid. But the moment it evaporates, it's merged with the whole. But she said, no, still I don't like it. Can you make something from nothing as a sculptor? I said, no, Mom, it can't be. Because we can create a sculpture by gathering a dust together, or we can break the sculpture and get the dust. But there is no way that we can bring a dust into the universe. So I did this work for her. It's called Emerging Angel. This is the first day. It just gives an appearance that one is becoming the other. So the same sculpture after a few days. This is after 15, 20 days. Through that small little slit between the glass box and the wood, the air goes in and eats the sculpture and create the other one. This gave me a greater faith. That evaporating sculpture gave me a greater faith that maybe there is many more possibility to capture invisible. So what you see now is called shadow for shadow. And what I like to tell you is we don't see shadow, and we don't see light too. We see the source of the light, we see where it's bouncing, but we don't see as they exist. You know, that's why in the night sky, we see the sky is dark, but it's filled with light all the time. When it's bounced on the moon, we see it. The same thing in the dark room, the little dust particle will, again, reflect the light, and we realize that the existence of light. So we don't see dark, we don't see light, we don't see gravity, we don't see electricity. So I just started doing this work to inquire further about how to sculpt the space between this object and there. Because as a visual artist, I'm seeing this and I'm seeing that. But how to sculpt this? You know, if we sculpt this, this has two reference points. The skin of this is also representing this. And skin of the other end also represents the floor. I did this as an experiment of casting the shadow. So this is a corrugated box and its shadow. Then the second one, the moment you bring any invisible into a visible world, it will have all the characteristics of the visible existence. So that produced a shadow. Then I thought, okay, let me sculpt that. Then again, that becomes an object. Again, I'm showing light. Then the third one. So what you see is nothing but shadow of a shadow of a shadow. And in the end, at that point, there was no shadow. I thought, oh, good, work is finished. you can see the detail. This is called gravity. It's called breadth. It's just 2 holes on the gallery wall. It's a false wall which contains like 110 cubic feet. So that hole is actually make the air comes out and goes in. So where it's happening we can see, but what's happening will remain invisible only. This is from the show called Invisible at Talwar Gallery. This is called Kayam. Detail. And what I like to tell you that, our senses are so limited. We cannot hear everything. We cannot see everything. We don't feel I'm touching the air. But if the breeze is a little more faster, then I can feel it. So all our construction of the reality is through this limited senses. So my request is like, is it any way to use all this as just a symbol or a sign? And to really get to the point, we should move beyond, to go to the other side of the wall, like illogic, or invisible. Because when we see someone walks, we see the footprint, but if you're just cutting that footprint from the whole thing and trying to analyze it, you will miss the point. Because the actual journey happens between those footprints, and the footprints are nothing but pause and time. Thank you.